The factory had been bleeding money for weeks. $2 million a day gone. Machines ran, lights stayed on, people showed up, but something invisible was quietly destroying everything. Executives were panicking. Managers were pointing fingers. And no one seemed to have the answer. But the truth? The person who would solve it wasn't sitting in a boardroom. He was standing on the factory floor, tired, unnoticed, and just trying to make it home in time to tuck his daughter into bed. Before we begin, if you enjoy powerful, emotional stories like this, make sure to subscribe, like, and drop a comment below. It helps the channel grow and bring you more meaningful content that reminds us all how much kindness matters. Daniel Carter had never planned to work at a factory. Life had simply pushed him there. 2 years ago, he had been a delivery driver with a simple routine and a modest income. But after his wife passed away unexpectedly, everything changed. Overnight, he became a single father to a 6-year-old girl named Lily. Every decision he made after that was about her. The factory job paid a little more. It offered health insurance. And most importantly, it had steady hours at least, that's what he thought. Lately, nothing had been steady. The company was in trouble. Everyone knew it. Supervisors walked faster, spoke sharper, and smiled less. Rumors spread through the break room like wildfire. Layoffs. Shutdowns. Bankruptcy. Daniel tried not to listen. He couldn't afford to. Every morning, he dropped Lily off at school with a smile he didn't always feel. Every night, he picked her up, made dinner, and listened to her stories about crayons and playground games as if they were the most important thing in the world. Because to him, they were. At the factory, Daniel worked on line 3, one of the busiest production lines in the building. His job wasn't glamorous. He checked parts, monitored machines, and made sure everything stayed on track. But Daniel noticed things. Small things. Like how the conveyor belt sometimes jerked slightly at exactly 10:17 a.m. Or how certain batches took longer to process, even though nothing seemed different on the surface. Or how the machine operators looked more stressed than usual but never said why. Most people ignored these details. It wasn't their job to fix them. But Daniel had always believed something simple: if something feels wrong, it probably is. One afternoon, during a short break, Daniel noticed a co-worker named Mike sitting alone, staring at his lunch without eating. Mike was one of the senior operators. He'd been there for over 15 years. "You okay?" Daniel asked, sitting beside him. Mike shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Place is going downhill anyway." Daniel didn't push. He just sat there for a moment. Sometimes kindness isn't about saying the perfect thing. Sometimes it's just about staying. After a few seconds, Mike sighed. "They think it's the supply chain," he said quietly. "Or bad materials. But it's not. I've seen bad materials before. This feels different." Daniel leaned in slightly. "Different how?" Mike hesitated, then shook his head. "Forget it. Nobody listens anyway." But Daniel listened. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch with a storybook in her hands, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, replaying everything in his mind. The conveyor belt jerks. The delayed batches. Mike's quiet frustration. It didn't add up. And for some reason, Daniel couldn't let it go. The next morning, he arrived at the factory 20 minutes early. Instead of heading straight to his station, he walked the line slowly, watching every detail. The machines hummed. The belts moved. Everything looked normal. But then he saw it. A small sensor near the conveyor system flickered for just a split second so quickly most people would never notice. Daniel frowned. He waited. 10 minutes later, it flickered again. Over the next few days, Daniel kept watching. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't want to sound crazy. But he started tracking the flickers, the times, the delays that followed. And a pattern began to form. Every time the sensor malfunctioned, even for a split second, the system misread the product flow. That caused tiny delays. Those delays stacked up. And across the entire factory, those tiny errors were costing massive amounts of money. It wasn't a supply issue. It wasn't the workers. It was a small, failing sensor that no one had paid attention to. Daniel knew what he had to do. But there was a problem. He wasn't an engineer. He wasn't a supervisor. He was just a guy on line 3. People like him didn't usually walk into management offices with big discoveries. Still, he thought about Lily. About her smile. About her future. About how much he needed this job to survive. So he took a deep breath, and tried anyway. At first, no one listened. The supervisor brushed him off. "We've got experts looking into it." Another manager nodded politely but didn't follow up. Daniel felt the familiar sting of being invisible. But he didn't give up. Not because he wanted recognition. But because he cared. He cared about the people on that floor. He cared about Mike. He cared about the families who depended on those paychecks. And maybe, just maybe, kindness meant speaking up, even when your voice shakes. Finally, one afternoon, he caught the attention of a senior engineer named Rachel. She was walking the line, reviewing reports with a serious expression. "Excuse me," Daniel said carefully. "I think I found something." Rachel looked tired, but she stopped. That alone meant something. Daniel explained everything. The flickers. The timing. The pattern. He expected skepticism. Instead, Rachel's expression slowly changed. "Show me," she said. They stood by the sensor for nearly an hour. At first, nothing happened. Daniel felt his confidence slipping. But then there it was. A flicker. Rachel leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. "Again," she murmured. 10 minutes later, another flicker. This time, she saw it clearly. And everything changed. Within hours, the engineering team ran diagnostics. Within a day, they confirmed it. The faulty sensor combined with a minor software misinterpretation was causing cascading delays across the system. A problem so small, yet so expensive. When they replaced the sensor and adjusted the system, the results were immediate. Production stabilized. Delays disappeared. And just like that, the factory stopped losing $2 million a day. The next morning, Daniel walked into work like any other day. He didn't expect anything. But something felt different. People were smiling again. Supervisors looked relieved. And then Rachel approached him. "Hey," she said, with a genuine smile. "You saved this place." Daniel shook his head. "I just noticed something." Rachel smiled wider. "That's exactly the point. You noticed. You cared." A week later, the company held a small meeting. Nothing fancy. But for the first time, Daniel stood in front of the room. He felt out of place. Until he looked around and saw Mike, nodding proudly. Rachel spoke briefly about the fix, the recovery, and the future. Then she said something Daniel would never forget. "The biggest problems aren't always solved by titles," she said. "Sometimes, they're solved by people who care enough to pay attention, and kind enough to speak up." The room applauded. Daniel felt his chest tighten, not from pride, but from something deeper. Gratitude. That night, Daniel picked up Lily from school. "Guess what?" she said excitedly. "I got a gold star today." Daniel smiled. "That's amazing." She looked up at him. "Did you have a good day too?" He thought for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, he said softly. A really good day. Sometimes, we think kindness is just about big gestures. But more often, it's quiet. It's sitting next to someone who looks alone. It's listening when others don't. It's caring enough to notice what everyone else ignores. Daniel didn't set out to save a factory. He just chose to care. And in doing so, he changed everything. If there's one thing to take from this story, it's this. Kindness isn't small. Attention isn't insignificant. And your voice, no matter how quiet, can make a difference. So today, notice something. Help someone. Speak up when it matters. Because you never know. Your small act of kindness might just change someone's world. And maybe, even save it.